In this video, Jordan Peterson talks about the relation between your personality and your political views.
Anyways, what Vinogradova proposed was that the hippocampus, if the hippocampus decides that what's going on roughly matches what you expect or what you want, which is more accurate, then it tells the reticular activating system not to be in a panic. And then the reticular activating system, controlled, we're going to assume it's on all the time, except when it's told to be off. The hippocampus says, you can more or less stay off right now because everything's going according to plan. And then all of a sudden, poof, things don't go according to plan. The hippocampus tells the releases the reticular activating system from inhibition, and then the reticular activating system wakes up all your subcortical circuits. And that's stress. And so, wake up would mean get afraid, but it would also mean prepare to get the hell out of there, so prepare to panic. And then it might also mean ready other motivational systems just in case they might be useful. And then that also means shut off your immune system, because who the hell cares about that if you're being chased by a tiger, you know, and pull all the sugar out of your blood, because you bloody well are going to need the energy. And so it's an emergency preparedness state. So then you could say that when you encounter an anomaly, what happens is that your body generates an emergency preparation state, and the magnitude of that is proportional to your perception of where the threat, of what level the threat corresponds to in your map. Okay, got it? Does that make sense? Okay, so there's something wrong with that theory. And that's very annoying, because it's a really good theory, and people have been coming at it from all sorts of angles, and it sort of matches the phenomenological ideas. It actually matches Heidegger's thinking quite nicely. And it was derived, as far as I can tell, virtually independently of Heidegger. And it goes along well with the neuroscience of anxiety and motivation in general. Like, it's a vicious theory. But here's a problem. So for a long time, people debated about who the hell was authoritarian. You know, because you could say after the Second World War, most people assumed that all the damn authoritarians were on the right wing, right? They were the fascists. And so you could say that's an exaggeration of conservatism. Yeah, you know, that seems kind of reasonable. But then people pointed out later, well, yeah, but let's not forget about the radical left-wingers, because by the time they become communist dictators, they seem pretty damn oppressive and intolerant too. All right, so I would say we don't understand what happens when political systems get too far in any direction. But there are models which are in development that basically indicate that, imagine this is agreeableness and this is disagreeableness, okay? And you can think about them as a continuum. But let's not do that. Let's twist them so they form a circle, all right? And then we'll say, well, how agreeable should you be? Well, if you're this agreeable and this disagreeable, things are going pretty well for you. That's a nice place to be. But if you're this agreeable, well, then you turn into Freud's devouring mother, right? You're so damn easy to get along with that it's okay. You just do everything for your child, absolutely everything forever. And by doing that, you undermine their capabilities, and they remain locked in the Oedipal situation. So that's like too much mercy and pity. Or you could be like the tyrannical father, like the Crumb brothers' father, who was like completely disagreeable and extraordinarily punitive. But the thing is, it ends up in the same place. They both end up in a variation of hell. And so these models seem to promote the idea that if you run any virtue too far, it turns into a vice, and all the vices have more common in with each other than they do with everything else, with anything else. So bad things are lumped together more because they're bad than they are by what variant of bad they happen to be. We're going to assume for the time being that the easiest place to localize authoritarianism is on the right-hand end of the spectrum. Okay, so we're going to think about fascism, roughly speaking. And I think that totalitarian governments tend towards fascism, whether they're left or right-wing. But how to sort that out hasn't been established yet. We don't exactly know what makes left-wing authoritarians like right-wing authoritarians. Something does, but we don't know. So I'm going to ignore that for a moment, and I'm going to concentrate on the right-wing side of the spectrum, the conservative side of the spectrum. Now, we know some things about conservatives. They don't like foreigners that much. They're pretty tradition heavy. They tend to frown on non-normal forms of sexual interaction, or even on many normal forms of sexual interaction. They may not even be that happy about fun. You know, so you could think the conservative is basically trying to stabilize society so that there isn't a lot that's unpredictable that's going to go on, or that's going to go on in the future. And so they're trying to maintain stability, and you can give them some credit for that, because it's the match between your expectations and the way the world lays itself out that basically inhibit your stress response. So stability, man, it's something you probably can't appreciate until you've had its complete absence. You know, well, the liberals, you know, their position is, yeah, stability. The problem is stability gets old unless you keep updating it, so, you know, you can't clamp too hard down on change, because if you do, then the system gets stale and outdated and the stability goes away anyways. So you got to allow some change and some exploration and some growth, and then the battle is between the people who want stability and the people who want change, and neither of them is right. It's the argument that's right. Right? They got to keep arguing about it, because whether we should be more stable or more plastic, roughly speaking, depends on the context and the time. And so that's something to think about too, because a lot of you are going, most of you are left-wingers because you're open. You're open, and that's a very big marker of the proclivity towards left-wing thinking. And so you're all going to be thinking that the left-wingers are right. But it's a primitive attitude if you're scientific. Because really what seems to happen is that both attitudes are right, and they're both adapted to slightly different evolutionary conditions. So, like, they're variants of the damn big five, those political beliefs. So liberal people are high in openness and low in conscientiousness, whereas right-wing people are low in openness and high in conscientiousness. And there's implications to that. One implication is liberals start the companies, for example, but conservatives run them. So artists settle territory and make real estate values rise. They're very open people. But then the conservatives swoop in and monetize it, which is kind of hard on the artists. But my point is that there's a dynamic between these two positions that has to be maintained dynamically in order for the system to survive, because you need to stabilize the damn thing so it doesn't fall apart, but you have to keep it adapted to continual change. And the only way you can figure out how much of that should be done on either side is to keep talking to the people that you don't like, because it's the only way to figure it out. So some people pull this way and some people pull the other way, and we hope that the middle of the pulling basically matches the line of optimal progression. So that's a much better way of thinking about democracy.